Before we go deeper into this story, I'd like to ask you, where are you listening from? Tell me in the comments. If you find these lost medical mysteries from history worth uncovering, subscribe and stay close. What I'm about to share with you was never meant to reach the outside world. My name is Dr. Samuel Reed. I was 29 years old in the winter of 1923, fresh from my residency at Denver General, when I accepted a position as junior physician at Pinewood Heights Sanatorium. I was hired not to treat patients, but to maintain medical records, to document symptoms, track recovery rates, and monitor the experimental high-altitude therapeutic protocols. Being pioneered by the facility's renowned director, I wrote down everything, until writing became too dangerous. There were 247 of us when the final patient transport arrived in November of 1923. We were a mix of consumptives from across the American West, railroad workers from Denver, seamstresses from San Francisco, war veterans carrying gas-damaged lungs, farmers' daughters from Kansas who had spent too many winters coughing blood into handkerchiefs. They came seeking the mountain air, the promise of Swiss-style treatment, and the hope that Dr. Edmund Blackwood's revolutionary methods could cure what city hospitals could not. The journey to Pinewood Heights took most patients 3 days by train, then another day by motorcar, up the winding mountain roads, until the pines seemed to close around them like the walls of a cathedral, sealing them into a world made of thin air and shadow. The sanatorium was not a hospital, but a compound, a 4-story brick fortress perched at 7,200 feet, surrounded by patient cottages arranged in precise rows like grave markers in fresh snow. There was a main treatment hall, a surgical wing, a pharmacy, and a small telegraph office which was said to function, though I never once saw messages sent or received. And then there was the isolation ward on the 4th floor, meant for advanced cases, they said, though I never saw patients brought down from there. Dr. Blackwood was a man of precise habits and very few explanations. He was in his late 40s, silver-haired, and moved with the bearing of someone who had never doubted a diagnosis in his life. The nurses respected him, though few seemed to like him. He had trained in Vienna before the war, studying under men whose names he mentioned in hushed tones during staff meetings. He believed in systems, protocols, hierarchies. He believed recovery wasn't about hope, but about measurement and control. He never raised his voice with patients. He didn't need to. The first few weeks were routine. Patients underwent standard tuberculosis treatment, rest, nutrition, fresh air therapy. The dining hall filled with cautious optimism, stories of home, plans for recovery. The head nurse, Margaret O'Sullivan, kept meals simple but nourishing. Broths, milk, soft breads. Her medical station was always immaculate, and her thermometers were always clean. But there were signs, quiet, easily missed, that not everything was as it seemed. In my first week, I found a discrepancy in the patient count. The admission logs showed 247 arrivals, but my daily census never totaled more than 220. When I brought this to Dr. Blackwood's attention, he assured me that some patients had been transferred to specialized treatment protocols and would return to the general population soon. I asked to see those transfer records. He said they were kept separately, for privacy reasons. Then the death rate began climbing faster than medical standards could explain. Tuberculosis was deadly, yes, but not this efficient. I marked when patients stopped appearing for meals, when beds went suddenly empty, when belongings disappeared overnight. I noted how often the crematory chimney smoked, and how Nurse O'Sullivan began serving meals with portions that seemed larger than before. I remember the first patient who made me suspicious, Elizabeth Hartford, 22, daughter of a Denver railroad magnate. Wealthy family, private room, the best care money could buy. Her tuberculosis was mild, caught early, good prognosis. But after 3 weeks of steady improvement, she was moved to the 4th floor for advanced oxygen therapy. That was October. 15th. I never saw her again. The official record said she had suffered complications, that her condition had deteriorated rapidly, that she had passed peacefully in her sleep, but I was the one who filled out death certificates. And I never wrote one for Elizabeth Hartford. When her father came to collect the body, he was told she had already been cremated, per health regulations. He left with only a small bag of personal effects and a donation receipt for $50,000, marked as a memorial contribution to continued research. That night, I started keeping a second set of records. Not for the hospital, for the truth. I found Nurse O'Sullivan's diary by accident. It was November 30th, 1923, and I was doing inventory in the medical supply room when I knocked over a crate of gauze. Her leather journal fell out from where it had been hidden beneath the bandages. The early entries were routine patient observations, medication schedules, notes about recovery progress. But as I read deeper, the tone changed. October 20th, Dr. B has separated the patients into two groups. Group A receives standard treatment in the main ward. Group B goes to the 4th floor. I'm no longer allowed up there. November 5th. Asked about Elizabeth Hartford today. Dr. B told me to mark her as graduated from treatment, but I saw her belongings being sorted for disposal. Nobody graduates by leaving their jewelry behind. November 15th. Found Dr. B's real treatment notes today. He's not curing tuberculosis. He's studying it. Studying how long different types of patients can survive on reduced rations. In different temperatures, under various stress conditions. Dear God, what have we become? November 28th. The screaming from the 4th floor stopped last night. All of it. Complete silence. I'm leaving tonight. The final entry was dated November 29th, the day before I found the journal. I tried to help 6 patients escape through the service tunnels. We made it to the Valley Road. Men in dark coats were waiting. They brought everyone back except me. Dr. B said I could stay, but only if I helped him complete the research. The patients who returned, they're different now, quieter. They eat everything they're given, no matter what it tastes like. That night, I broke into Dr. Blackwood's private office. What I found wasn't medical research. It was systematic documentation, hidden behind his medical diploma was a leather-bound ledger titled Survival Threshold Analysis, Phase 3. Each page contained detailed records, patient names, physical measurements, psychological profiles, and something called processing efficiency ratings. The categories weren't medical, they were agricultural. Patients were sorted by yield potential, stress resistance, and resource optimization. There were notes on which patients had family members asking questions. Which ones had money? Which ones would be missed? Elizabeth Hartford's page was marked. High-value test subject influential family provides cover story funding. But the most chilling discovery was in the back of the ledger. Blueprints. Not for medical equipment, for a furnace system. Detailed schematics showing how to modify the crematory to handle increased volume and varied material types. Handwritten notes in the margins discussed bone disposal efficiency and ash consistency optimization. Dr. Blackwood wasn't treating tuberculosis. He was perfecting something else entirely. I found Thomas Mackenzie, the war veteran, in the basement. Storage room. He was alive. Barely. His skin was pale, his lips cracked, his arms bound with medical restraints. When he saw me, he tried to speak but couldn't manage more than a whisper. How long? He asked. 2 weeks, since you were reported dead, I told him. He nodded, as if this made perfect sense. The others. I cut through his restraints with surgical scissors. I don't know, but we're leaving now. We moved through the service tunnels that connected the buildings, passages meant for heating pipes and electrical lines. The air was thick with the smell of coal smoke and something else. Something sweet and heavy that made my stomach turn. We reached the motor garage just before dawn. I had stolen keys from the administrative office, along with enough morphine to keep Thomas conscious and enough cash to get us to the nearest town. As we drove down the mountain road, Thomas finally spoke clearly. There are others. Other places like this. Dr. Blackwood showed me a list. Sanatoriums, hospitals, research facilities, all running the same protocols. How many? I asked. Dozens. We reached Grand Junction 3 days later. I went directly to the police with everything: the ledger, the diary, the photographs I had taken of the modified crematory. I told them about the missing patients, the forged death certificates, the systematic disposal of human beings. The police chief listened patiently, took notes, assured me they would investigate immediately. 2 hours later, federal agents arrived. They confiscated all my evidence, declared it a matter of national medical research security, and informed me that any further discussion of Pinewood Heights would be considered a breach of government protocol. The agents gave me a choice: accept a generous research position at a hospital in California and never speak of what I'd seen, or face charges for theft of classified medical documents and violation of patient privacy laws. I took the position. Thomas took a similar offer in Oregon. We never spoke again. Pinewood Heights closed permanently in January 1924. The official reason was funding shortfalls and structural damage from severe winter weather. Dr. Blackwood relocated to a private research position with the Department of Public Health. The building was demolished in 1925, but in 1987, during construction of a shopping mall on the site, workers made discoveries that changed everything. They found the basement levels that weren't on any original blueprint. They found medical equipment that wouldn't be invented for another decade. They found personal effects belonging to hundreds of patients, cataloged and stored like museum specimens. And they found the bones not in the crematory that had been too thoroughly cleaned, but in a sealed chamber beneath the 4th floor. They found remains from at least 180 people, sorted and organized with the same precision Dr. Blackwood brought to everything else. Each skeleton was tagged with a number corresponding to entries in a final ledger, one the federal agents had missed in 1924. It contained the complete list of patients, processed through experimental protocols, along with detailed notes on the effectiveness of different elimination methods and disposal techniques. The FBI investigation in 1987 was classified immediately. Families of missing patients were told their relatives had died of natural causes and been buried in unmarked graves due to health department regulations of the era. The shopping mall was built anyway. Today, people shop for clothes and electronics directly above the spot where 180 human beings were systematically murdered in the name of medical research. But here's what haunts me most. We were never the only facility. In 2019, during renovation of a hospital basement in Montana, workers found a cache of documents marked Inter-Facility Research Coordination, 1920s Medical Efficiency Project. The papers revealed a network of 23 institutions across the American West, all conducting similar population sustainability studies on patients who wouldn't be missed. Pinewood Heights wasn't an aberration. It was a pilot program. Thomas Mackenzie died in 1994. Before he passed, he gave his final interview to a local historian. He said he'd spent 70 years trying to forget what he'd seen in that basement, but one detail never left him. Dr. Blackwood kept a photograph on his desk, not of family, of a group of men in suits, standing in front of a government building. On the back, someone had written Phase 4 approved for implementation, -1925. I always wondered what Phase 4 was supposed to be. We never found out. The federal agents made sure of that. But if you drive through Colorado Springs today and stop at that shopping mall, look for the memorial plaque near the food court. It reads, "In memory of those who sought healing in these mountains, -1923 to 1924. 247 people sought healing at Pinewood Heights. Only 31 walked out alive. The rest became data points in an experiment." That was never supposed to end. What do you think happened to the other facilities in that network? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if any of this sounds familiar, if your family has stories about relatives who went to mountain sanatoriums in the 1920s and never came home, I'd like to hear from you. Some secrets are too big to stay buried forever.